Today on The Lean Manufacturer, Chris Wolf delves into the dynamic world of the connected worker and the pivotal role it has in shaping the future of manufacturing. Speaking to Anthony Huffman, Industry 4.0 and Digital Transformation Strategist at Koch Industries, they talk about how the connected worker is armed with real-time data to transform them into decision-making powerhouses.
Koch Industries is one of the world's most admired organizations. With 120,000 employees, it's the second largest privately held organization in the U.S. It's in the top 10 worldwide. They've got at any point in time between 500 and 600 manufacturing facilities across a number of operating companies. Anthony Huffman is my guest today. He's an expert on Industry 4.0. He's the enterprise transformation architect at Koch. Anthony, welcome to our podcast today. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
No, thanks for having me. I appreciate the opportunity to share what I'm passionate about.
And do you prefer Anthony or Tony?
I prefer Tony. Either work, but prefer Tony.
Well, I loved your title, but folklore has it that some of your collaborators refer to you as the Lord of Transformation.
Yeah, I was hoping that didn't get widespread, so that's the moniker they gave me last week in one of our operating companies. I hope that doesn't stick with me.
Well, I think they're planning to go to the UK and try to buy that lordship for you. So when your birthday's coming, be on the lookout.
Sure.
But with all kidding aside, you're really an expert in how connected workers are going to be shaping the future of the businesses run by Koch. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, so connected worker is a pretty broad concept. It's been around for quite a while. I think the excitement and acceleration of connected worker really stems from this Gen AI revolution. We've got a lot of operating companies experimenting with Gen AI. We've been at that journey for a little while. And this idea of connected worker is how we're going to unlock various personas in the factories, maybe even beyond the factories into supply chain and product development for that ubiquitous augmentation that I like to term as. And that's how do you help accelerate people's day-to-day activities, make them more intelligent, allow them to understand upstream and downstream impacts. And so this connected worker strategy is paramount to how we achieve that.
And I know that you have businesses that do discrete manufacturing, do batch manufacturing, continuous manufacturing. What are the commonalities for connected workers in those environments, and where are there specifics that are different?
Yeah, so Koch, for those that don't know, is a pretty large conglomerate of large manufacturing operating companies. And as you said, we have got continuous, batch, discrete. We have a variety of different industries we serve. And so there are commonalities, but they're few and far between. And it's really around this idea of capability. So we're trying to unlock a capability around connected worker that will focus on various personas. And in some cases, those personas could read across all of those different types of operating companies. And that could be maintenance, it could be quality, it could be operations. And so that's where we're trying to share better practices, move from knowledge sharing to knowledge adoption to knowledge creation. That's the goal of how we are approaching connected worker. But for continuous, batch, and discrete, it might look a little bit different. There might be a different recipe, and there will be a different recipe on whether we focus on an asset in the more continuous operation and how we provide intelligence on that asset versus discrete. It's going to be about material flow and how we optimize the value chain. And that's going to be unlocking persona-based applications that provide that ubiquitous augmentation.
In an organization with 600 facilities, that's got to be a tremendous adoption challenge. Talk to me a little bit about the journey that Koch's been on.
Yeah, so again, we've been at this for a few years now, and there's various companies that are higher in maturity, and we're collectively now building a community of practice around the space of connected worker. And that allows us to better position ourselves to read across those better practices that we've identified. That is the avenue where we can drive adoption. The organizational change management is a big piece of that. And when we go into a factory, we're looking at, are they at the right state of maturity to apply this new capability? Do they have that digital DNA? Are they using data? Do they drive operational efficiencies through that data? And then are they building something that we can scale up, that we can drive across the enterprise, across as many facilities as we can? There's very few opportunities to drive across all 600 facilities, but within the operating company, we can find those scalable manufacturing processes that we want to focus this connected worker effort on. And so we have a framework that we follow. It's how we innovate, how we experiment, and the outcome of it is a proof of scalable value. I'm working with one of our operating companies, and we're talking about how do we fold in OCM? How do we make sure that organizational change management is embedded into that process? And we do that via communities of practice of that manufacturing process. So let's say we focus in on one core business process. Let's just take plastic injection molding, for example. We would want a community of practice that is providing input, guidance, and helping build this connected worker strategy along the way so that when it goes to the wider community, they were a part of it. And that's a big piece of OCM is how do you pull people in early on? And then another part of it is how do you demonstrate, the day in the life of various personas before and after? And so we do some knowledge share on this is what pains you have today, and this is what the future state of this process is going to look like. And that's really the transformation. There's three parts to any business: how you run, how you improve, and how you transform. Transformation is you're disrupting the way that you operate. It's going to be a new step change in how you perform, and it's going to look and feel a lot different. And so we need to go through a lot of OCM to bring people along.
With 600 factories, you can't be transforming all of them at any one time. What's the mix of the portfolio that are in that run stage, improve stage, transform stage at any point in time?
Yeah, I mean, the great question. So we have 8 different manufacturing operating companies, and within those, they've got a variety of capabilities they're going after, a desired state of maturity in those capabilities. And each operating company has a roadmap. Where are they headed? Which sites are they going to focus on? And so my role is really to accelerate and to broaden the lens of what the latest technologies can bring into those factories. And a big part of it is how do we assess the maturity? Where are they at in that maturity curve? And there's kind of 4 elements of maturity at a very high level, generalized level. Are they stabilized and standardized? Do they have those lean daily management practices? Are they using data to problem solve and to escalate? Have they standardized on KPIs, and is that a tiered approach? But kind of the day-to-day leadership standard work, the operations standard work, is it in place and is it working? Can you tell if you're ahead or behind and where the abnormal states are? The second piece is how do you develop an industrial data fabric? That's going to be how we're going to unlock that intelligence. And it requires us to connect assets and to connect platforms and do it in a more modern architecture landscape. The next is that ubiquitous augmentation I talk about. It's connected worker, it's intelligence, Gen AI. And then the last stage is automation. And so you kind of look at where those sites are in that journey, in that maturity curve, if you will. And we look to accelerate going from 1 to 4 where we can, where it makes the biggest opportunity and impact across the enterprise. So focused on those core business processes, not so much going from site to site, but trying to narrow in on where there are scalable opportunities. So think in your mind, break down the 4 walls of a factory. What are your core business processes and how do you cluster those and really transform those elements? Those are the biggest value drivers.
I had a conversation just recently with Clay Wilker from the aerospace industry. He's a practitioner of lean disciplines, and he talks about the mindset that's necessary to be willing to look for problems and have the courage to spot them, identify them, call them out, and embrace them. If you're coming in from corporate to the OpCo, are you finding that the folks receiving your advice are welcoming it? Are they competing for your time? Are they saying, we'll take the next one, go to the next guy first?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. We have a management philosophy. It's termed as principle-based management, and it's designed in a way where we seek the best knowledge. We make sure that we are challenging ourselves and going through a challenge process back and forth. So for me, this culture at Koch really embraces how we can accelerate, how we can capture value quicker and more efficient. Let's not reinvent the wheel. We have this other mental model around the new to. Is this new to one of our operating companies, new to Koch, new to industry, new to world? And we use that framework so that we don't reinvent the wheel. We don't start from scratch. I'm coming in with humility first and making sure that people know I don't have all the answers, but I can help accelerate, and I learn and I listen. And so that gives me a good sense for the people, processes, and technologies where there are gaps, where I can help, where my network can potentially help. So we have a variety of communities of practice, internal and external SMEs that we can tap into. And so brokering that knowledge sharing, knowledge adoption, knowledge creation has been very encouraging to see that each operating company that I work with, they're excited about it. They're ready for what's next, and they're willing to raise their hand and say, I need help, have the humility to ask and to try to find those better practices so they don't reinvent the wheel.
Twice in our conversation, you talked about communities of practice. Can you tell me at a very, very brass tacks tactical level what a community of practice is, what it looks like, how it functions?
Yeah, absolutely. So we've got the fortunate position where in operations, we have at a highest level kind of this operations transformation team that looks at 2030 and beyond. Where are we headed? What do we need to consider as part of our strategic journey? What are the disrupting factors that are coming? And how do we stand up communities of practice that can help from a knowledge management perspective, move from knowledge sharing to adoption to creation? And so those communities of practice are formed around either a capability or a discipline, and they represent the SMEs across those operating companies. And it's a forum where they can bring better practices, they can adopt better practices. They meet in a virtual context, but they also have a lot of on-site meetings. They'll do site tours, site visits. So it's really our mechanism to share and cultivate that knowledge process that is part of our management philosophy. So we have about a dozen of them in operations. Some have over 100 people that are actively engaged in how we accelerate transformation and adopt better practices. Underneath that or alongside that are republics of science. So community of practice is more SMEs, operations folks, the folks that are driving capability, people, process, and technology. They're making sure whatever new innovations come in are deriving value in the factories, in the operations. The republics of science is another concept, and that is more technical in nature. So it would be folks that are well-versed in some type of technology, they're SMEs, and those individuals are sharing better practices, but also coming up with artifacts that help enable those communities of practice so that they kind of give guidance and direction on any new disruptive or emerging tech. And so they work hand in hand, and that's been a great lever for us to take advantage of the knowledge across our enterprises and make sure we know and we are taking advantage of those better practices that are out there.
Are there prizes? Are there professional distinctions that are given to members of either of those groups?
Some of the operating companies have some awards, some types of recognition, and we have a compensation philosophy at Koch that really rewards based on contribution, and that could be contribution within your role within your operating company, but also how they participate in these communities and how they can create wider value across the enterprise. And that's something that I think is talked about in other organizations, but we've really, really embraced that. And like I said, in our management philosophy, knowledge is one of our guiding principles. It's something that is an expectation, and these groups really embrace it.
You talked about this new to philosophy, and I know that recently you asked the question on LinkedIn, is Gen AI contributing value to the manufacturing industry, or is it merely hype? How did, as you've been experiencing bringing this new to the world, new to Koch, new to us technology in, how are you answering that question?
Yeah, so I personally am fortunate enough to do a lot of benchmarking and understand what applications are out there that are truly disruptive in manufacturing space. And so I've talked with a lot of leading companies about how they're deploying Gen AI and what the value is that they're able to capture. And it's moving fast, and I'm surprised how impactful it truly is. A lot of the early use cases were kind of back office and support functions, a lot around the finance organization, how we optimize some of this procurement and supply chain, order management, and customer service. Today, it's getting in the shop floor, and it's by these connected worker solutions. So think of an operator in the future having a mobile application that gives them intelligence, lets them know how they're able to optimize what they work at, the upstream and downstream impacts, and applying Gen AI on top of that so that you can kind of capture tacit knowledge and then relay that when you don't have these SMEs around, or over time you're kind of losing a lot of that tacit knowledge. You can capture it virtually now, and that's the big unlock for us. Is how do we keep evolving it? It's ever evolving. It's the first kind of jump into this space, but it's only going to improve, and it's an exponential curve of impact and capability over time. You got to start somewhere and start small.
When you're connecting workers and helping them operate with, superpower intelligence behind them, it seems like something everybody would aspire to, the Tony Stark, suit that you can put on to be a superhero. But not all people want to be connected, and they don't want to be tracked. Talk to me about that tension between connectedness and enablement and folks feeling like Big Brother is watching over them.
Yeah, sure, yeah, and it's a journey for not only manufacturing companies, but I think a lot of industries, of how you build this, what I call digital DNA, into your organization. I think you have to find out how the users operate. Those kind of lean daily management practices are still applicable. If people are using paper-based systems or whiteboards to manage their operation, you have to be able to make it ubiquitous for any technology introduction. It can't feel like something different or new, or take them off of their normal path. And that's how you kind of slowly introduce it. So you start with, how do I digitize what exists? How do I help enable that intelligence over time? And for some of the seasoned veterans, the folks that have been there for a long time, it's actually rewarding, because they're, in a sense, capturing their knowledge, their tacit knowledge, as opposed to having to train new people, and then those people leave, and then another person, then they leave. They're able to do it once in some type of digital format that's being captured, that's being listened to, that they feel rewarded, they feel recognized, that they're able to contribute in that manner. That's been the unlock for us, is how do you make it ubiquitous? How do you make it part of their day-to-day work? And then showcase that we're capturing the tacit knowledge for longevity of the organization, and you're not having to train people over and over again. There's actually a what's in it for me there.
So at a very tactical level, what types of technologies and software have you been experimenting with, and which ones have you found have the most immediate return on investment?
Yeah, I can't provide too many details on the actual software, but at a high level, we've got connected worker applications. So think of low code, no code applications in a few of our facilities. And that's really, instead of an operator or various personas having to go into the variety of tools that they're needing to accomplish their day-to-day tasks, whether it be ERP or MES. They're able to do it through an application. So that makes them, number one, more efficient. They're not having to take information out and manipulate it and then put it back in. But also it's personalized. It's designed based on their persona, what they need to know, how they need to perform, so they can manage by exception a lot quicker. So that idea of low code, no code is starting to take off. There's a lot of vendors in that space, and don't have any recommendations for the audience, but do take a look. The other areas we're very much interested in is anything around AI and intelligence that you can layer on top. So Gen AI applications, you're going to need an industrial data fabric to gather the information, have it complete, accurate, timely, gather asset information, material information, all of the workflow information that you need. And that needs to be contextualized in a manner so that you can actually apply the intelligence on top of it. You're also going to need a knowledge graph. So knowledge graph is, again, that new 2 model, fairly new to industry. I see it a lot in finance and other organizations outside of manufacturing. But from a manufacturing lens, that industrial knowledge graph, fairly new. And for us, it's that contextualization layer. So how do you pull all of this information? You've got work instructions and SOPs. You've got all of this information captured in MES and other platforms. How do you contextualize it in a graph so that you can leverage Gen AI or AI applications that need that contextualization? We then fold in that tacit knowledge on top of it. So those are the kinds of next gen technologies. They require a lot of foundational software, a lot of foundational technologies to get there. Again, it's a journey. It's those 4 kind of stages of maturity are things that you're going to need to spend time and effort on. And there's a variety of softwares to help you kind of accelerate that.
At PTC, we've really made our name in engineering between CAD and PLM systems. And we have a lot of discussion going on right now about how to help our clients get their digital house in order and take the dense data that's captive, in CAD data management systems that could be turned into enterprise applications if they were to, enable access to what's in the PLM databases to a broader audience. Is that a theme that resonates with you guys?
Yep, it's kind of the same approach with this low code, no code in manufacturing. You can do likewise in product development. So each manufacturing company has 3 distinct value chains: product realization, order fulfillment, supply chain, and manufacturing execution. For product development, there's a multitude of applications that you could build on top of the PLM or leveraging PLM information. And that could be for personas such as the customer. It could be a design engineer. It could be someone in procurement, for instance, that needs preview to what's coming and where do I need to step in, and it almost triggers them to, you need to do this and by this date. That way everybody's in sync on the workflows and the stage gate process. So there's a lot of opportunity in that space. I see a lot of leading companies headed there, especially in automotive and other organizations. There are ways to unlock that connected worker strategy so that you can streamline, reduce that lead time from ideation to prototype, but also to allow your customers to co-develop, to help you along the way and make sure that it's a win-win scenario versus supplier-customer kind of in opaque type of situation where they're not able to get the transparency they need to make the right decisions when they need to. Connected worker helps solve for some of that.
So tell me a little bit more about that. I mean, I'd love the idea of the kind of the brackish water where you have what was inside of the 4 walls of your organization and then your customer, but there's an intermediary area there that has so much promise.
Yeah, so for me, it's again a maturity curve where you've got, for manufacturing at the lowest level, it's this industrial Internet of Things, capturing asset information, sensors, becoming predictive, prescriptive, how you optimize those assets. At the next higher level, you've got smart manufacturing, which is the orchestration of various roles to improve flow. And when there's an abnormal condition, create a self-healing type mechanism via digital so that you can free up leadership to work on what's next. That's that smart manufacturing layer. The next is Industry 4.0, and Industry 4.0 expands into supply chain and product development, all of the factories within your network, the logistics, the procurement, as well as product development life cycles and that closed loop like you're describing. So having that vision state of Industry 4.0, where we're headed, it's got to try to link everything together. And so for a lot of our operating companies that have very complex, discrete operations, they're going after that vision state. When we invest, we try to connect the dots between them as opposed to having them siloed activities. And so this connected worker is a good starting point to start capturing how we not only impact shop floor and support functions for manufacturing, but also supply chain and product development, and having the same lens on that platform and how we scale it up will ensure that we create that digital thread of intelligence. We can then expand it into the ecosystem, as you described. We can expand it into our customer view. Maybe they get a slice of what we're deriving, that ubiquitous augmentation, that intelligence. They get the slice that they need to be more successful and to have transparency. That could be into a supply chain. It could be into product development. It could be into our factories. They may need to know certain parameters, for instance, that we've ran at and the details so that they can be more optimized. So it's kind of a maturity curve, and not all of our operating companies are going after the same desired state, but helping accelerate and kind of widen the lens is a big part of my role.
Koch's an extremely disciplined organization. You run very hard on metrics. When the operating companies are looking at all of the opportunities they have for improvement, how do you help them narrow down where to place their bets? And how do you measure return on investment?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I'm actually in a lot of these conversations as we speak. So there are 3 parts to the business, as I described. So run, improve, and transform. And you need to delineate, measure, and manage each one of those a little bit differently. And so in some cases, our opportunities are, how do you carve out teams for transformation and drive it by a strategy execution better practice, strategic initiatives, the targets to improve. And they should be answering the question of where are we going to be in 2030 and beyond. The improvement piece is, how do we solve for pain points? How do we solve for opportunities? How do we ensure that we're driving metrics, KPIs to the desired state month over month? And so there are mechanisms to do that, a lot within lean daily management practices and principles, where you've got the SQDC boards that feed up from cell to area to site to some type of corporate view of a monthly reporting mechanism. That should be driving your improvement activity. It should be giving you a sense for, these are the right KPIs we need to be focused on, and the projects associated with those should be linked to that KPI. And that could be financial. It could be a KPI that is more leading and giving you a sense for, if I solve this, it should result in an impact to the customer, to the value chain. When we talk transformation, for me, it's about how we improve the employee experience, how we create this connected worker augmentation. The workforce of the future is not going to want to work in a paper-based system and try to manage all of these various inputs and outputs via paper, via Excel spreadsheet or whatever the systems we have today. They're going to want something modernized and ubiquitous to how they operate. That's paramount to transformation. The second is, are we building competitive advantages? So we look at the competitive landscape. Is this capability needed, and what desired state of maturity is needed to become competitive and stay competitive? That is ever changing. It keeps growing with technology, keeps stretching out. So we need to have a good lens of that. And then it's the KPIs. You should be driving KPIs, operational, supply chain, whatever it may be. Financial is a big part of it. So returns on investment. We are making big investments, but it's not the entire picture. So that's what I try to explain to people is, if you're looking at transformation just from a financial lens, you probably already failed. You need to think about it broader because it's something that is a journey. It takes time. You definitely need a return. You definitely need to show the cost benefit. But there are a lot of other benefits that are intangible or things that are a little bit more difficult to measure that are going to make you competitive and help you stay competitive over a long period of time. There's also the growth aspect of it. Transformation in an ideal state is allowing you to create new products and services, allowing you to expand to new markets and uncover new opportunities, disrupt your business model in some cases. So if you're doing it correctly, you should be able to see all of those impacts, and there are KPIs associated with that. But those are the kind of general thoughts around how to measure this success.
What message do you have for the employees of Koch who are going through transformation right now?
Yeah, I would say we embrace transformation. Everybody's excited and focused on it. I think for in my observations and in my assessment, there's an opportunity to really take a step back and say, is this truly transformation or is it improvement with digital capability and technology? And again, improvement should be answering the question, what's the pain point? What's the opportunity? What am I trying to solve? You kind of have a known state. Transformation is who are we going to be in the future? And so try to use that as a gauge to say, is this activity just improvement with digital, or is this truly transformation and going to disrupt the way we operate? Our operating models are going to look and feel different in the future. So constantly have that challenge process and make sure that your leaders understand the difference between the two, because that's an important concept that I keep finding.
You're a storyteller at the end of the day. What are some of the stories that you're telling internally to galvanize and rally the troops at Koch?
Yeah, that there's a way about transformation that you can innovate and experiment alongside a bigger initiative. And so I use the analogy and the story of how do you capture a shared vision, translate that into a strategy, build a plan, refine that plan, and then a mechanism to execute it, translate it into a capability map. So what capabilities do we need to achieve that strategy? And then you need to drive the architecture design so that you're future-proofed and you are able to unlock and enable those capabilities with a modern approach. And then you do programs and projects. I see a lot of organizations jump from vision to project, and they tend to skip that layer that is critical to keep everybody aligned and not turn into 10,000 things of people transforming when they're really improving. You need to have that wider approach defined, and you need that to be your transformation journey landscape. And the analogy I use is that's the big tanker ship. It's going to be waterfall projects, waterfall initiatives, lots of moving pieces. In parallel, you can create these tugboats, these smaller initiatives, we call them pod teams, to innovate on the new capabilities, to figure out ways to increase maturity and capabilities, to apply new technologies and build that muscle over time. And that rides alongside the bigger tanker ship, and not only rides alongside, but helps fund it, helps steer it in the right directions, because you're going to have a lot of good lessons learned from those pod teams. And so there's a way to go about it that you can in parallel drive transformation alongside a bigger transformation initiative, which has a big roadmap and wave deployments. And that's one thing that I've been cascading the message around and making sure that people are aligned to how that comes together.
And when you leave work behind, what do you do for fun to unplug?
Yeah, to unplug, I love getting outdoors, and I live not too far from Wisconsin. I'm in the Chicago area. So we spend a lot of time biking and getting out as much as possible, going to the lake. For kind of outside stimulation, I've been writing screenplays for a long time, so it keeps both sides of my brains occupied, and try to make sure that I can use those skills both, in my personal life, but also professionally, where storytelling is a big part of everybody's job. And so I've learned kind of that mastery of storytelling and being able to get people excited about a story. And I've worked at and attempted to start some type of career around screenwriting and screenplay editing. And that's been great. And it's a nice side gig to keep me occupied.
That's fantastic. Well, it's no wonder that your colleagues call you the Lord of Transformation. You do come to it with a tremendous amount of humility, but also tremendous knowledge base. And just can't thank you enough for sharing what you've known and learned with our audience here today. Thanks, Tony.
No, thanks, Wolfie. I appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you for listening to The Lean Manufacturer. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe on your favorite streaming platform, and please leave a rating or a review. Be sure to check out other episodes to hear new perspectives on improving life for manufacturers in areas like operational efficiency, quality, sustainability, lean strategies, and the connected worker. If you have a topic of interest, a question, or want to provide feedback, email us at theleanmanufacturer@ptc.com or visit us at ptc.com/theleanmanufacturer.